Anyway, let's talk about some of these tank changes. Nika, we did not hear from you in the run up to these changes, and I'm curious to hear once you've now gotten your hands on them. How do you feel about them?
Well, so far so good. I feel like a lot of the parsers have been like fucked up, so it's hard to really say how much my DPS has changed one way or the other. In terms of the feel, I can say the best thing. The two best things would be Oath's not interrupting cooldowns anymore in the combos.
Yes,
it's
that
a lot
is a huge
easier.
thing.
Like if you're gonna tank swap to have a Rage of Halone ready and procced for the provoke. Like that was always a problem originally because you had to change the shield oath and then proc up Rage of Halone. Like at least this way, that's easier.
Right.
Also for Paladin, one of the biggest complaints I had earlier about Divine Veil and Clemency is that Divine Veil, the shield buff that goes out to everybody when you get healed, was not activated if you healed yourself. They changed that, which is awesome considering Divine Veil's shield is based on the HP of the person who heals you. So if I manage to heal myself before a healer does, it's a big freaking shield.
Well, and you got some DPS adjustments in there too. Have you been able to feel those?
Not yet, particularly because I haven't done any of the end game stuff really, and I haven't went back and done any of the old content to like judge the difference. But what I am feeling, and I want to actually go back into like A1 and check it out, is the TP reductions. Because I know like in a lot of the end game where the monsters don't really jump or move around, run out of TP very, very easily, but at least that's fixed now. So far so good, but I haven't had been able to really take a parser since it's been kind of broken every time I've tried and to really test the difference. But I mean, so far so good. I'm not complaining.
I mean, I sort of feel like everyone's sort of just got a sort of sense of the overall damage that they can pump out. I've got to say, as a Dark Knight, and I did switch all of my accessories from strength to Vit. And as a Dark Knight, I feel like I'm pumping out less damage than I was.
I think you are. I think Paladin got a slight increase because it was really shitty to start with, and I think Dark Knight and Warrior have a slight decrease.
Well, and this sort of like I think that this kind of goes back to our question, the entire episode that we did about job homogenization, and it feels like an attempt to make all three of the tank classes play more similarly, and I don't know that that's maybe necessarily the best thing.
It's just that
if you need me,
donation.
Call for the lead fun.
What? I don't know. That scared me.
What was that? What did that say?
That if you need me, call for the Lee fun. All right.
Sure. That was from Lee Fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee. We appreciate that. And thanks for the call.
So I think what I like is that they didn't completely nerf tank damage. What they did is make it so that it feels more like a tank doing damage rather than a tank being a DPS. And because of that, now you also have more HP and defense as a tank. So I think this is kind of what tank should have been in the first place, is a tank that can deal damage rather than a damage dealer that can take hits.
I just think it's a bummer to take an option off the table. Like I now granted, I haven't tried switching back to my strength accessories to see what the difference is, but it's taking one of those options off the table, one of those options for having a certain play style or making a certain set of choices that I think is a little bit disappointing.
But I don't think the play style actually changes. Like Warrior still has a leg up on all the other tanks with their Fell Cleave and their AoE DPS stance and all that shit. Like they still are going to be doing more damage than a Dark Knight or a Paladin.
Yeah,
so but still that.
But to have, I mean, we had two types of tanks before. We had strength-based tanks and we had vit-based tanks, and there was a choice. I mean, it was up to the player, and it's not like it impacted your ability to run dungeons. It's not like it impacted your ability to run Void Arc. It really only, you had the biggest difference that presented itself in the most challenging content, like your EX primals, like your raids, and
Right, I would never go into a raid blind for progression with strength gear on. Like, no way.
Well, yeah, but after you have that on farm,
Right.
then, yeah, you start switching
then, yeah,
stuff.
then I
Exactly.
slowly start to switch it out. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's sort of what I'm getting at is that with that option taken out, it just seems like, you know, there's less dynamics being able to be applied to the job, and I don't know that that's the best thing. I mean, if someone in the chat tell me if they've fucked around with strength accessories and whether or not that has any difference. If it's a decrease, I think that's really bad.
Now, for what people are saying, that both strength and vit have the same effect on your attack power. But if you look at strength accessories and look at vit accessories, vit always has like 2 more vit than strength accessories have strength. So if they're the same, then vit will always give
but
you a little bit more.
But you've also got those secondary stats on there that's going to be a big difference, because most of those strength accessories are going to have determination and crit, and those secondary stats do make a big difference, especially if you're replacing it with an item that has parry and skill speed.
They do, however, I've noticed that, you know, we're talking about mechanics and the way that these fights have built out. Almost every fight has a real heavy tank buster. So I feel like if you're going for the strength, you're going to take some real damage.
Yeah, that's true.
So this way you can do damage with the same scaling as strength with HP.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's fine. It's just I've noticed a pretty big hit to my DPS, and you know, I mean, I guess it's gonna take some time to see how that ends up really shaking out, because we've got to get everyone to the current eye level, and then we've also got the added question mark of materia, because we've got the materia slots that were added now to these to the new tier of gear that you know, and I guess it wasn't expressly said, and this was a bit of a surprise to me, because I thought that this was going to be a universal application among all of the gear that's already existing, that we would get materia slots added to, you know, to tone gear and stuff like that. We didn't get that. It's just the addition of the materia slots to the new tier of gear. So that, I think, is going to add you know, a considerable dynamics when everyone starts getting in there and starts putting in materia of their own, you know.
Let me ask you guys this question. With the whole change to VIT, have you noticed a substantial increase in your HP as well, or did they balance that?
Oh, yeah. There's always a huge boost to...
Yeah, it's the same as it was before. Like, VIT to HP is the same.
Okay,
that
all right.
change
So,
yeah.
because here's my thing, too, because someone said in the chat that if you try changing all of your accessories to strength gear, good luck surviving, because I'm pretty sure that I've noticed in a lot of the new content, too, tank busters are also hitting a lot harder than they would have beforehand. Oh, I don't listen to you.
Totally missed my entire thing I just said.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what Nika said. But as we push our eye level up, that's always been the case, is that in raids, and I guess maybe not in the normal tier raids, but always the savage tier raids, that you did have those big ass tank busters that would take you down if you didn't fire a cooldown or if you didn't have VIT accessories equipped. And now we start seeing some of those same mechanics worked into normal mode, which I think is really encouraging. I think that's really awesome. And I think it sort of does reinforce, look, tanks, we want you to be in VIT stuff, and this is why. I just, you know, I just question whether or not making all 3 tanks play more similarly in terms of the numbers that they can put up for DPS, in terms of you know, their defensive options, being able to switch stances, if that just doesn't take an element of dynamics away from the game overall. That I don't
think it will. Like, if you're playing a warrior, you're playing it because you like to tank, not because you like to DPS. If you like to DPS, you play monk or dragoon or something.
No, hold on. No, if you play
Nobody
warrior,
plays dragoon.
If you play warrior, it's because you want to do damage and tank.
Right.
Which they still do, more so than the other tanks.
Yeah, so, I feel like this change, the tank changes with this patch, aren't homogenizing anything. You're just making all the tanks balanced with each other. So all the tanks do roughly the same amount of damage. They all have roughly the same amount of defensive capabilities, but they all play differently. Like,
but it's mostly cosmetic changes. That's it.
No. Okay, see, look, Paladin is the easy mode tank. If you play Paladin, you're fucking doing the easy mode shit. I play Paladin. I can't play Warrior for shit, okay? I haven't touched Dark Knight, so I assume they're a lot harder than Paladin.
Dark Knight is a little tricky, yeah.
Yeah, see, so it's not... The tanks aren't homogenized, they're just balanced, because before, you would never want to bring a Paladin ever because their damage is so far below everyone else's.
I don't know.
Right, and now it's pretty balanced.
Homogenization is when you go from one class to the other, and you're like, all right, where's the X ability for this class?
Exactly, but I get a little bit of that whenever I switch into a different tank role.
Well,
where I'm like, where's the analog to this move?
Well, and to a certain extent, yeah, because tanks obviously
Tanks are gonna need
the same
cooldowns.
things.
Well,
right?
yeah,
But
they
it's
need
about
to
how
have
operate.
similar. They need to have similar toolkits. Absolutely.
Like,
but
for example,
I would
there's nothing like Living Dead, right?
Hollowed ground.
The hollowed ground, yeah.
Well, okay, they do the same thing, but not in the same way.
No, but again, that's just mostly a cosmetic change.
But how varied can you make tanks, though? You can't be like, all right, well, you know what? You can't have a hollowed ground type thing because they have it. We need to make you different. You kind of have to.
No, there are some of the same things. That's what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Tanks need a similar toolkit.
Yep.
But I still just sort of feel like it's just a different skin that you're putting. You're putting one role on.
I disagree because the tanks all have 3 very different toolkits. Warriors
They have different play styles.
have slashing debuff, and they have massive AoE damage. Dark Knights have the int down, so that you don't need a monk for raids.
And you have to manage your MP for Dark Knight. It's very tricky.
And that's really the only difference that I can name between the 3 tanks is the MP management aspect of Dark Knight.
Now, Warrior has a lot more stance. Dancing Warrior has a lot more potential for DPS. Like,
Yeah, but
Paladin,
that's
like switching even from Warrior to Dark Knight. I'm like trying to figure out how to DPS on Dark Knight.
Really,
I'm sitting there like, okay, Warrior has the stance. Warrior has a strong single hit and a strong AoE that has nothing to do with enmity. It's purely DPS. I'm like, where's that on Dark Knight? It doesn't have it. So, I don't know. I think they're different enough that they don't feel homogenized, but they have to be similar enough, and hopefully they balance the endgame raids enough that the DPS check isn't going to be what matters. The reason people cared about Warrior doing more damage is because the DPS checks matter. If they are not balanced as horribly this time around, the tanks doing similar damage is a lot better moving forward.
And if the tank busters in like normal rating are any indication, then being able to survive a hit is going to play a huge role in just how much more damage can you put out.
Okay, so let me pose a question to Aniro. Were the tanks homogenized before this patch, before the change?
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we've been moving that direction for a while.
And would you say they're more homogenized now?
I actually think that they're more homogenized since 3.0, since getting the next round of abilities.
So it wasn't the VIT change that homogenized.
No, yeah, no,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
No,
That's what I thought you were trying to say.
No, that this has been like this actually since the end of 2.0. I think at 2.0 you actually had a pretty good difference between warriors and paladins, and there were inherent differences or reasons to bring either one to.
Yeah, and
to
you know what? I'm going to actually
event.
agree with him now, because that's something that we all pointed out was a lot of the changes that the jobs were getting going into Heaven's Ward kind of like changed it up a little bit. Except for the tanks, the tank changes seem to be like pushing them all a little bit closer.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them that, but they do still play different, obviously.
I really do think that it was in the 50 to 60 jump that's where that started happening. And I mean, it's not like I'm not like salty or upset about the tank changes. I'm just wondering if if this is the best thing.
Do you think that might have been a product of what we saw a lot in the 2.0 run, wherein one of the tanks would be labeled worthless and the other one would be labeled the go-to tank, where you didn't see that so much with DPS?
I think we stopped seeing that after the warrior adjustments. That warriors were Garbo.
We saw that at the start of 3.0.
No, that's when we started seeing it. That Warrior was better and that Paladin was.
That's what I'm saying. That's where the problem started. I'm talking about 2.0 to 2.5. We did. It didn't flip that much back and forth between Paladin and Warrior. Once Warrior was quickly adjusted after 2.1, then both those tanks pretty much it came down. It didn't come down to mechanics. It came down to people tweaking skills and stats and being able to get different things out of the jobs.
That's right, because I see the Garbo side of Paladin every time that Nika tanks for me.
Lol.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
Lol.
But it was so bad for Warrior at one point. I wonder if they're trying to
From 2.0 to 2.1, but after that point, because the job was essentially broken at that point.
Because you remember the early days of Juxta being a Paladin? There was like always this huge feud between Juxta and a Nero, because paladins were better than warriors.
Yeah, and after that it died off because they fixed warrior.
Yeah, but I'm saying it came back in 3.0 when nobody wanted paladins at all, and they only wanted.
That's where I'm saying that the trouble started. Was they tried to condense the tanks down to be more similar, didn't do anything for paladins DPS, and they instantly became garbage because that's all that mattered. DPS was the only thing that mattered in our savage fights, right?
I'm on Camp Nero now.
So now I think with all of the tanks becoming more homogenized.
So would you rather have paladins being bad and the tanks not being homogenized?
No, I think what we had identified on the job homogenization show is what should have happened, that they should have specialized paladin more for damage mitigation as opposed to just pumping up their DPS. That's really all they did, was they just brought paladin up a little bit and the other two tanks down a little bit, and they go, oh, problem solved. But they could have applied some much more creative thinking there and actually doubled down on paladin's shitty DPS and go, okay, DPS is not going to be that big of a deal in these fights moving forward, so why don't we specialize you for damage mitigation? I mean, that's the theme of Paladin anyway. And their skills don't reflect that. Right. I mean, they do in a way. They are more potent than other tanks, but not drastically
and
so.
If they also would have spread that a little bit and gave Paladin some abilities that spreads that defensiveness more to like the party too, that would have made them even more attractive.
Right.
Because once you get to a certain point where you're not taking a lot of damage, you can survive stuff, then you don't really need more defense on top of that because you're fine already.
Right. Yeah. See that and that's mostly what I'm getting at, is that they could have made a bunch of different changes with that, and I think they just chose the laziest option.
Motherfuckers.
I mean, that's just my opinion. Let's go back to our phone lines. We've got Karavan. Karavan, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? It's actually Craven.
Craven, okay.
Craven the Hunter.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point on the tank changes and stuff. I'm actually happy. I play Warrior and I play Paladin, both, and I'm actually happy that they did this because I'm on the stance of, if you want to do that, pump out that DPS, you want to do that, then don't play a fucking tank. Be a DPS.
Yeah.
Tanks are not designed for that. Plain and simple, they're not. You can raise DPS and stuff, but it's also SE's job too to not put content in there like DPS checks and stuff to force players to have to go past that, and be creative with strength and all that to make up for that. Because I think with the Savage, with Alex and stuff, that's where the problem became to, and that's where everybody focused on the strength and stuff, and it was like, well, Paladin sucked now and everything. I don't think Paladin sucked as much as what the content they were bringing in.
See, and
so
I think with the move away from the crazy DPS checks, because I think what the DPS checks were supposed to provide in the first place was it was supposed to be an artificial gate towards progressing in the content. And so what they assumed players would do is just wait until the gear that they had was better. And what the players actually did was like, no, this means that we have to get rid of our scrub white mages and our scrub tanks and make sure that they're doing as much DPS as possible. It placed an undue burden on both the healers and the tanks, which is, I think, why they backed off of that statement. But I don't think that that's a good reason to go, oh, well, tanks just shouldn't worry about their DPS, because you can push those numbers even higher. There are things that you can do and I'll be honest, both as a healer and a tank, that you can do to push those numbers, and anything that you can be doing to contribute to the party is going to be for the benefit. But I think that Square Enix really set themselves up to have a lot of groups turn on newer or less geared tanks or healers, and really placed kind of an undue burden on them. And I don't know if it's fair or not. I took myself out of raid progression, so I can't say that I honestly have a first-hand opinion about that.
I don't think that if SE brings in the content that doesn't make players who are that play tanks, force them to feel like they can't pump out enough DPS, as long as SE kind of scales that back to where that DPS check is not as important, I think the changes to the tanks will be, and I don't think it was that drastic. I think they brought Warriors DPS down a little bit and brought I think someone made the comment that they brought the DPS down from like Dark Knight and Warrior down a little bit, and the DPS of Paladin up a little bit with adding attack to Vit.
Right.
And stuff, and it lowered it lowered the DPS numbers, and it was like everybody freaked out. It was like, oh my God, you broke Warrior. Now we can't put out the DPS. Now we can't put out these numbers and everything.
Right.
Well, you shouldn't have had to. You're a damn tank.
Right.
If you want high numbers, be a Dragoon, be a monk.
Well,
be a ninja.
that's not the point. That's not the point. It's not because it's like, oh shit, I can't put out high numbers. What it is it's more of a numbers shock. I've seen this in previous expansions in World of Warcraft. They had a big, huge like inflation in their numbers at one point, and they had to scale it back. So when a new expansion came out, and people started like, all right, I was doing like 50k DPS last expansion. Now I'm doing 14k DPS. This is unacceptable. But so is everyone else.
Right.
It was just the shock of seeing
the
different numbers, and that's what's got them more worried than anything else.
And I think that's what I was trying to drive at with my point about the materia additions, is that once we all kind of push our eye level back up there and start adding materia into the fray, I do think we'll start seeing tanks be able to produce the same numbers.
It'll even itself out.
Yeah, but I think that materia selection is going to have a big role to play in tanks being able to push their numbers, which, if that's how they end up structuring it, if that's the structure moving forward, I am totally willing to get on that boat and ride that, because
ride that materia boat.
Absolutely, because that's long-term thinking, and that's what we've said Square Enix needs to be doing with their game, and I think any kind of long-term thinking, long-term planning like that is great. And yes, I know we're very much in the business of the short-term reactions to things, the initial reactions, and I think you're right. The number shock is going to be great. If you're a tank and you haven't logged on since 3.2, you're not going to be putting up the same numbers that you were. It's not going to, you're definitely going to see a change there. But I do think that with the systems that they've put in place towards gear progression and the way that it's moving forward, that there is a chance, and none of us are there. The community has to get to that point before we are able to look at it and go, this was objectively a good or a bad thing to change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hell, when you start looking at your HP numbers now, you're not freaking out, are you?
Oh no, the HP numbers look great.
I
don't think the HP, because vitality was just to raise the HP. I don't think it really, in the defensive is you had a higher HP pool. It didn't really mitigate the damage that you were actually taking. It was just giving you a high HP pool. So it is the initial shock of oh my God, I might be doing a little bit less damage. They broke my job. How could you do this? And I just find it funny to read on the forums that people are just like, way to go, you broke the job.
Oh yeah,
they didn't really do that.
Of course, we knew that there were going to be tanks who spent millions of gil on these overmelded accessories that were gonna hop on and just they were brought right to the middle. Now you're right in line with everyone else. And I think those are the people who are going to be the most upset by this change. I get it. It's justified anger, but at the same time, let's see how this ends up shaking out long term. I have my own reservations. I've expressed that. I don't know if it was the best change, but that's what you guys need to that's the key phrase there. I don't know. We don't know. None of us really know yet. But I think down the line, when we start raising our eye level, we start spending our lore tomes, and we start getting into new damage tiers. Because every time there's new gear, the DPS just gets pushed farther and farther, and it's cool to see the bigger numbers come up. Like, I love popping onto DPS and hitting a 5K crit. That's really fun.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like, and I go back, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, man, I remember the days when I loved a 900 crit, you know?
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
and
I
so
remember the
that's,
first time I broke
I
1,000.
Yeah, I
What a
think
feeling.
that is really gratifying, and that's part of it. Is that, you know, I think that you know, tanks are going to be just really disappointed by the number that they're going to be able to put up. So yeah.
Right. Another quick thing too. Don't get me started on the lore gear. I was so excited, and I kind of tried to stay away from looking at the dev posts and all that stuff about, you know, because they were saying the lore gear and stuff is going to be themed off of primals and,
Right.
and everything. And I'm sitting here and I've got my fingers crossed. I was like, okay, Titan's going to be tanked.
How did
you
they
know,
fuck that up?
You know, don't
Right.
make them look like a walking rock. You know, all this stuff. I log in, I go straight to Shire, look at it, and what does tanks look like? A fucking Dragoon.
Yep. Yeah,
Monk.
the tank gear is fucking
I just
hideous.
lost it when I saw that. I just lost it.
What's
I was
with
like,
that
I
big-
literally want to fly
What's
to
with-
Japan, find the guy who designed that, and literally slap the piss.
I mean, it looks
And be
cool, but
like,
it doesn't
"You
say
make
tank
him
at
look
all.
like a
Oh
tank."
no, it does not say tank. What is with the big open space for the? What's with the titty window? I do not need a titty window.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. It
Exactly.
looks stupid.
It. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, "How?" I mean, I it's a video game. It's fantasy. I understand that, but how in the hell could you tank in that gear?
Yeah.
It looks like you have leather gear on with some spikes on and a skirt, and that's it.
I can see
It's
it right now. Like
what the
someone's
hell?
someone in the the art team was like designing the Titan gear, and Yoshi P comes in and goes, Titan? Well, yeah, that makes the most sense. Exactly. That's why we're not gonna give them Titan. Yeah. And they're like, Yoshi, I don't think that is. No, you know what? You're fired. Somebody get over here and make Ifrit the tank.
Can I do it naked?
Do you think they got scrapped at the last second?
You know what? That may have been it.
You know what? They just dropped the ball in general on the glamours.
I mean,
the dungeon gear, it's all the same.
It's a
recolor.
recolors.
Yep, it's all
What is that a
recolor.
retread of Somil?
Someone said it was like Airy or something.
Oh,
but
Airy.
I don't.
It was one of those middle
Yeah,
dungeons.
it was one of the middle ones.
And I'll grant him that glamour gear is pretty underutilized right now because we just all ran through that leveling and didn't necessarily farm stuff out of it. I mean, there's a body piece that comes out of what is it? The what's the last one? Not the one in Ishgard, the one that takes place in Ishgard.
Vault?
The vault. Thank you.
Kasumi Cascade says you're not looking forward to that fell cleavage.
But he's not a warrior anymore.
Boo.
That doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I like Papa's idea that it got, like the Titan gear got scrapped at the last minute. Like they were getting ready to like put it all in the game, and the guy comes up with his like stuff for Titan, and it's just like a big boulder that you're wearing, and he's just like, Ifrit,
A
go.
recolor of Darklight?
Basically.
memories.
Anyway, yeah, I think a lot of the glamour choices this patch were pretty disappointing. By the way, thank you for the call, Craven of Exodus. We were happy to hear from you. If you'd like to call Limit Break Radio, Limit